To this, another episode of A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is where we break down and discuss episodes of TV shows that you may not have even heard of. I believe these TV shows need a little more love, and that is what this platform is here to do. Each week we will be covering different shows from all over the globe. We'll be breaking down each episode, giving you the main highlights, and going through it bit by bit. But for now, I think it's best that we find out what's on the menu today. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now season 8, and of course we've got a lot of exciting shows to come this season, and I just really want to get into it. It's been a long time since I've actually done this, because I've actually had a break for the last 6 weeks from recording, because obviously we had Christmas, and I knew I had enough time before I actually had to get recording again, so it's now mid-February, and the world's gone to fucking shit. I just need to put that out there. It has gone to hell, but hopefully at some point things are going to get better. They have to. We have to keep positive and we have to keep looking forward. It's the only way to go, and hopefully things will sort themselves out. But right now all I care about is throwing myself back into some TV shows and talking through them with you guys. Thank you to everyone who is listening and who subscribes to this. I'm very grateful. Anyone who follows, you're an absolute star. This podcast isn't anything without you guys. It's just me talking into a microphone. So thank you so much. So, as you know, it's season 8 and we have been clearing off quite a few different shows from the actual list that I've got. And today we're going to be going through another one that's going to be heading off the list pretty soon, because it's a 1-season show. But since we have finished Hannibal now, and until we know more about that, with the season 4, we can only speculate. But right now there is one more TV show in that universe. I suppose everything's in a universe these days. And it is Clarice. And that is the series that we're going to be covering today and over the coming weeks. However, let's have a look at what else is going on this season. So like I said, we've got Clarice season 1. We're going back inside number 9 for season 7. Of course, we missed inside number 9 last season just due to scheduling, so I'm glad to get that back on the card. We're going to be finishing up with Santa Clarita's Diet, which I'm sad to see go because it's such a fun show, but hopefully at some point I'll be covering iZombie, which is also a fun zombie show. If you haven't seen it, it's just daft and bizarre and really funny. And if you like Ghosts, then especially the US version of Ghosts, go and watch that. It's got the wonderful Rose McIver in it, and she is brilliant in it. I think it's such a versatile role for her, and she plays every part that she plays in it absolutely brilliantly. Of course, she plays the main character called Liv Moore, which I think is such a great name for a zombie. But anyway, as for the rest of this season, we're going to be covering the second season of Criminal UK, and then we're going to be adding something in called Loudermilk. Now, the person that actually suggested Loudermilk to me was also the person that suggested Schitt's Creek to me, so hopefully it's as good as that. And if you haven't seen Schitt's Creek, that's also fantastic. Now, as for Ginny and Georgia, I did say that Loudermilk would take a backseat if Ginny and Georgia was coming out anytime soon. It's coming out in June, so just when this season would end, Ginny and Georgia comes out, so I don't know, maybe it's going to be straight away that I get into it and I get through it. However, let's get into today. Clarice, season 1, episodes 1 to 3. Actually, just before I get into the episode, I just wanted to say that I have a good friend of mine who actually wrote a book just before Christmas and published it just before Christmas as well. And I have read the book and it's fantastic. So I just wanted to give them a little shout on here. Hopefully some of you will go pick up the book. It's such a fun little read and I got through it in like a full night. It was brilliant. Really couldn't put it down. Really sweet story. Definitely should be like a Hallmark movie or maybe like a 6-part drama series on the BBC or something, because it was just really fun and it was just such a sweet story. So if you get a chance, go check that out. I'm going to link it in my bio, but it is called Your Presence is Requested, and it's presents as in Christmas presents. But I think she's done a fantastic job with it and I'm really proud of her. So that's that. Now let's get into the episode. Episode 1, The Silence is Over. And so we pick up not long after the events of Silence of the Lambs. So, at the end of Silence of the Lambs, if you don't remember, Clarice caught Buffalo Bill, the killer, who had someone tied up in his basement down what looks like a well of some sort. And she managed to save Catherine Martin, who is the girl, and deliver her back home. But it seems that Clarice has PTSD from that night. Now she has tended to keep herself to herself, and she just wants a job where she's sat behind a desk, just basically doing paperwork. She is part of the behavioural science division, and that's the same place that Will Graham was part of. So at some point, maybe, she was taught by Will Graham. Since I want to keep them in the same universe, that's what I'm going to say, that she was taught by Will Graham. And hopefully, if we do get a season 4, we can actually see Clarice in this guise come back. And she is played by Rebecca Breeds in this show. However, at this point, Clarice is actually going through a psych eval, and the therapist isn't convinced that she should ever go back out into the field. However, Clarice doesn't want to really go back out into the field at all. She just wants to have her normal day-to-day job, just assessing people's behaviours and drawing conclusions as to what these people are like. She doesn't want to be out there. However, due to the fact that Catherine Martin's mother, Ruth, is the Attorney General, when she actually shouts, the FBI listens, and she wants Clarice to actually be on a new case that's just come up. It seems that there has been 2 women murdered, and it also seems that they have succumbed to a serial killer. And since Clarice has this reputation now, after dealing with Buffalo Bill and obviously her connection to Hannibal Lecter, the Attorney General wants her on the case. And so she is literally dragged out of a therapy session and taken to the place where the crimes have been committed. And she ends up working under a man named Paul Krendler, who is played by Michael Cudlitz, which he is so good in this show, and he's been great in the other things that I've seen him in. I always enjoyed him from The Walking Dead, where he played Abraham, but also more recently I've actually seen him in Superman and Lois, where he's played Lex Luthor, and he's always been fantastic in whatever I've seen him in. So when I actually saw that he was in this, I totally forgot, because I always forget, and I was chuffed to see him. I know it's going to be a quality show if he's in it, but his character, Paul Krendler, doesn't like Clarice, because he was shown up by her when it came to finding Buffalo Bill. He thinks that she is just a fluke and a one-trick pony, and she is constantly out to prove herself because of his doubting ways. And he makes it quite clear why she's there. She's there because she has a name. She is a sort of a celebrity when it comes to criminal masterminds and especially serial killers. So having her there gives it this legitimacy, and it's shown later how much he disregards her, because he only takes her on the case when she's playing to the cameras. So when the cameras aren't going to turn up because another body has been found, they don't take her. Like I say, Clarice, however, just keeps reiterating that she doesn't really want to be there. She wants to have a desk job. She doesn't want the fame and notoriety that has come with this unfortunate situation that she found herself in. She's still a trainee at the FBI, let's not forget. As for these murders, when she's asked for her opinion on what is going on, essentially she's made to sort of perform for these FBI guys. Because of the way that Paul Krendler doesn't like her, he essentially tells her that your opinion doesn't matter, but we're going to hear it out anyway, so you need to dazzle us. And that shouldn't be how it should be for this obviously quite talented FBI agent. And it's like she has to justify herself all the time. And unfortunately, that is the way for the world when it comes to women. And I am allowed to say that word, women. I'm not under any ban. However, because of Krendler's disdain for her, he puts another agent on her, a guy called Thomas Esquivel, played by Luca de Oliveira. And essentially, he has to follow her around to make sure that she is staying in line. He, however, quite likes her. He thinks that she's got some good insight and that she's a good fit for this job, especially when she starts to assess these women. It's Thomas who really takes note of what she's been saying. So she looks at these bodies, and it seems that they've been stabbed in multiple places and a gunshot in the head, because none of the actual stab marks cross over each other, or as she puts it, they kiss. There's a method to it. It seems like someone has staged these bodies to look this way. But of course, because of Krendler's attitude towards her, she has to go out and prove herself. He can see exactly what she's seeing, and she lays it out for all of them to see pretty easily, and yet none of them can actually see the truth behind what's going on. Then once she's paraded in front of the press, she's told by Krendler that she has to say whatever he wants her to say. So when he tells her that this is definitely a serial killer, she has to go along with it, and she calls him a serial killer to the press. So now they're in a hunt for a serial killer, even though she's not entirely convinced that that is what they are looking for. After some investigation, she finds that there is a drug trial for children with special needs. And as she goes further down the route, she actually finds out that there is a reporter already looking into this. Now, as we know from Hannibal, when a reporter's involved, it's going to be pretty serious. But thankfully, this woman isn't like Freddie Lowndes and isn't just throwing stories out there. This woman, however, when Clarice and Thomas actually go over to her house, is found in her bathtub, with her wrist cut, but she is still clinging on to life. Thomas heads inside to try and help her and ends up getting into a scuffle. The man who actually tried to kill her and has been killing these other women is in the house. Clarice goes upstairs and tries to help out, and eventually she ends up getting flashbacks to what happened with her and James Gumb, Buffalo Bill. She eventually shoots him, and when she tries to interrogate him and ask him who did this, why are these people doing this, who is trying to silence these people, because 3 women are dead and this reporter is nearly dead as well, due to the actions of this man and whoever is behind them. He tells her that he wants a deal, and it's up to Clarice to try and convince Krendler to let him have this. Krendler tells her that that's not going to happen, and that's not the way this works, and she knows that. He tells her just to go and do her job and report to the press that they've caught the serial killer and give his name. Clarice, however, defies him. She goes in front of the press and she tells them that she wasn't sure if it was a serial killer. This is an ongoing investigation, and she believes that these people were trying to be silenced, which obviously is going to piss off not only her boss but also the Attorney General. Episode 2, Ghosts of Highway 20. And so Krendler and his team are actually sent down to Tennessee to look into what seems to be some sort of cult situation. They keep referencing Waco throughout the episode, and it seems like the series isn't set too long after that incident. It's at least all fresh in their minds anyway. But in this case, it seems like an ATF officer has actually been shot on the premises of this cult. The FBI, all they want to do is just find out who took the shot and take them into custody. Have a look around the place and just make sure that everything's okay. However, obviously the cult leader's not going to just allow these people in. They're trying to set up their own little state, I suppose, or country, I think they actually call it, in this small area within the United States. And so all over the house, they've just got people on the roof waiting to take a shot at anyone who crosses their border. However, it seems that this shot has rang out when this person, this ATF agent, wasn't even on their land. When Clarice and the team get there, Krendler actually pulls her to one side and tells her that after the whole incident with the press, he doesn't want her there anymore. He's already told the Attorney General that he wants to transfer her as soon as they get back. Which, to be fair, that's really what Clarice wants. She doesn't want to be out in the field. She wants to be behind her desk. It's only because the Attorney General has asked for her to be out there and in his team that she is getting this treatment. However, the only way they actually find that they can get into this compound where this cult lives is when a young boy spies Clarice. He runs in and tells the leader of this cult that there is a woman outside. And of course, he's got plenty of women inside that bow to his whims, but he wants a challenge. He wants someone else in there. He wants someone like Clarice. Clarice tries to play him at his own game and gets made up for him to make sure that she looks pretty for him, which will hopefully lull him into a false sense of security, and she can get the information that she needs out of him. Clarice, now that she's seen this boy, actually wants to make sure that everyone inside is safe, because she was already told that there were no children inside, which is an obvious lie now. So they need to make sure they're doing checks, and they need to make sure that everything that is going on inside is above board. But of course, this is Krendler's nightmare. He doesn't want Clarice being in there. He doesn't want her involved in any of this. He just wants to get through the day and get her out of his sight. But once again, Clarice is the star of the show. Fucking hell, it's the name of the show, for Christ's sake. But of course, Crendler wouldn't know that. So once inside, Clarice starts to have visions. Not from Jane Gum this time, but from her past. She actually sees herself as a child, and it seems that she grew up in a similar situation. Or at least she was around men like this cult leader, and she saw their insecurities and was able to manipulate them. But during one of these flashbacks, Clarice has to make her excuses and get out of there. She becomes rather emotional. It seems like she lost her brother at some point, way back in the past. And it seems to affect her, so she makes her excuses and heads to the bathroom. However, the cult leader tells all his minions to start causing chaos for the police. And the only reason is because he wants to speak to the local sheriff. The sheriff at this point is part of the law and order group that's outside this compound. Eventually the shooting stops and they allow the officer inside. Turns out though that the sheriff is actually fucking dodgy, and the shooting that happened was a pure mistake by the boy who actually introduced Clarice into this compound. While everyone else seems distracted, Clarice decides to sneak back inside because she wants to find this boy and she wants to get him out of there as soon as possible. However, once inside, she finds an area within the house that has actually been set up with cameras, and it seems to be filming the rooms where the women who live on the compound would go into, and businessmen and local authorities would come in there and they'd sleep with these women. So essentially they had a prostitute ring, and of course that would be where the illegal bit comes in. Clarice gathers the evidence and tells Crendler that she can get this guy. She can get him to talk, she can get him to tell her everything about the whole operation, but she just needs time. And so she tries to seduce this guy, knowing that her being a pretty woman, he'd fall for that. And he does. Hook, line and sinker. She goes over to him, she flirts with him, she, at this point, has a recording device on her, and she gets the evidence that they need, which means that it will bring down most of the local enforcement, but at least they can clear out the rot and get back to policing. The leader, however, when he starts to get rough with Clarice, ends up getting shot in the head by the expert sniper, which is Thomas Escoval. And when the case is all wrapped up and everyone is now safe, Clarice is able to come out. She meets with the Attorney General, and the Attorney General tells her that she knows that Crendler has put in this request for her to be moved, and knows that obviously they aren't getting along. However, since her performance, Crendler has actually revoked that. And so now it seems that where she didn't feel part of the team in episode 1, she now is going to be part of the team. He's going to start to trust her, and he's going to start to trust her instincts, because she's proven now, not once, not twice, but now 3 times, that she knows what the fuck she's doing, if he lets her off the leash, so she can do what she needs to do. Episode 3, Are You All Right? Now, as you know, I absolutely love an episode where it is in a confined situation, where it's just a certain number of characters doing their thing. I actually learnt there was a term for it recently, and I just cannot remember for the life of me what it is, but I'm sure it'll come back to me at some point. But I find this kind of episode fascinating because it just, especially something like this where it takes place in an interview room. So it's a lot like the Criminal UK that I'm going to be covering at the end of the season. And of course, the one that I covered 2 seasons ago. But it's just such a clever concept. And there's not a lot of action in it, obviously, because it's basically sort of the psychology of the whole thing. Them playing off each other, them trying to manipulate each other into getting the answer that they need. But in this instance, it involves the FBI versus the guy who was the killer in the first episode. Obviously, they are trying to find out who has been trying to kill these women and trying to get as much information as possible on who would do this kind of thing. We know that the man who actually was the killer was hired by some people, and he told Clarice at the end of that episode that he wanted to talk and that he wanted to make a deal. However, this time when he sits down in the interview room, he tells them, I didn't ask to make a deal. And straight away, because of everything that Clarice has been through when it comes to Crendler, he initially starts to doubt her. Straight away, he's back to that being doubtful of her. And so now they are just all sat around trying to get as much information out of this guy as they possibly can, but he just keeps clamping up on them. They try all different types of tactics, including using his military background against him because he's a professional sniper. And of course they have Escobar in there, who is also a sniper who was trained by the army as well. But just when they think they actually have something on him and he starts to talk and he starts to give the reasons as to why he did the things that he did, they finally think that they've got him, but it just turns out that he's as good at this as they are. And he's playing them at their own game. He starts feeding them information that he thinks they want to hear just because they want to hear it. The only point that he becomes rattled is when they mention that his lawyer is there. He tells them instantly that he doesn't want to see his lawyer whatsoever, which is a strange thing to be saying when you're under the cosh like this and you just want out. But he tells them that he's not bothered by any of this and he doesn't want to see his lawyer. But it's the first time that Clarice has seen him react in a way that actually he seems scared. And it turns out that this is due to the fact that this man isn't actually a lawyer, but he is a hitman. And so eventually they work out who this man is, and they begin to ask him some questions while he's just waiting. And eventually he makes a runner for it, just as they end up getting dinner for everyone on the crew, including the man who's in the cell. Eventually, because Clarice thinks that this man has no respect when it comes to women in authority roles, but does respect women due to some of his mannerisms that he has had throughout this whole process, she decides to go in and speak to him. She sits down, she talks to him about everything that's happened and that she knows that there was an investigation going on from this reporter. But not only that, that they just needed his help. And if he helped them, she would help him because they offer him witness protection. It's what he wants because he knows that then he will be safe. And so just as he decides to talk, he manages to take a sip of the beer that they brought him just to calm his nerves. He tells a story about how his dad used to drink that and then that he never really liked the taste. However, when he tastes it, it turns out that the lawyer wasn't the only one who was sent there to kill him, and that a man dressed in a fake police uniform actually was the one who delivered the food and has poisoned this guy. At first they think he's having a stroke, but no, he's done. He passes out there and then in the interview room and then dies. And so now this seems to be a whole conspiracy. And once again, Krendler has to start trusting Clarice because she's got closer to this than anyone else. And she's got closer to having answers than anyone else. Okay, so this has been a really short episode while I've been trying to get back into this, but this show is really, really good. I'm really enjoying it. The links to, obviously, the Silence of the Lambs films are amazing, and I feel like the voice of this woman actually sounds a bit like Jodie Foster in the films. Obviously, Jodie Foster in the film. The other one was Julianne Moore. But it's fantastic. She's doing a really good job as this character that's so well known by now. And even though there's no actual link to Hannibal, it feels like it's set in a very similar way to Hannibal. The lighting is very dark. Obviously, it's a horror or a psychological horror, so the dark tones are going to be there anyway. It would feel weird if it was bright and breezy in this kind of setting. But a lot of the flashbacks that kind of happen in it feel very much like they would do in Hannibal, but also some of the sound design feels that way. It seems quite sharp and quite abrupt at times, which is very similar to the way that it was in Hannibal, and something I greatly admired in that show. As I've said before, it is unfortunate we don't get to see someone as Hannibal in this show. Obviously, at the end of Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal runs away. He runs off to go after Dr. Chilton, I believe it is, to have a friend for dinner, as he puts it. So he's in South America at this point when this show is set. I also like the fact that it's set not long after the actual film. So the film was in the 90s, and this feels not far from it. It feels maybe 93, latest 95. Some of the technology that's in there, I feel that it probably came a bit later, but actually, I'm not entirely sure. But it's really good. It's such an interesting show and an interesting take on a very well-known character. And the types of situations that they've been in so far, it does feel a bit like Hannibal in the way that it's sort of got a villain of the week. So for instance, week 1, they were obviously trying to hunt down this killer, thinking it was a serial killer. In week 2, it would have been this bizarre cult leader type person. And then back to episode 3, it's more of a psychological game with the murderer from week 1. But actually it ends up turning out that he isn't the true end game in all this. So you've got a few times where there's a bit of a distraction there, or there is something else going on that just shows the abilities of the character. But it's a really interesting show, and obviously plays a lot with psychology, and I'm really into it. I forgot how good it was, like I said, I always do, until I start getting back into these shows, and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, that's why I picked it. That's why it stood out in the memory. I wish they had got a second season. I believe at one point there was one in the works, but it ended up getting cancelled. And yeah, I think that I'm going to enjoy this show. And I hope if you get a chance to watch it, you do too, because it's fantastic. And especially if you're a Silence of the Lambs fan, I think it's great. Anyway, as for today, I am done. Please go and have a look in the links in my bio. I'll put it on my link tree because my friend really needs the support. She's done really well with this book and I'm proud of her for it. So hopefully you guys will go read it and enjoy it as much as I did. I don't know about you guys, but January was a tough month. It felt like it was 3 months. And I read this story and it's set in and around Christmas and it just gave me that Christmassy feel again. So maybe go and have a look at that because it's really good and it'll lift you. But as for today, I'm done, like I say. So thank you for listening. I'm glad to be back doing this again. I know it's just been a week for you guys, but it's been a while for me. But until next time, I thank you for listening. I hope you're all well, and I will speak to you soon. Bye. And that is it for now, amigos. And yes, I am as angry as you are at me for that sentence, but I hope you enjoyed the show and had some fun along the way. It means a lot that you are listening and supporting me. This is an independent podcast after all, and doesn't get a lot of backing, so it's great to know that you're out there, you're listening. And if you want to come talk to me on any of the platforms I'm on, just come say hi. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and I'm even a little bit on TikTok. I don't post that much, but I'm on there. And you can also drop comments in the comment sections on any of the platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get your podcasts from. But as always, thank you for your time, and I will speak to you soon.